Ladies and gentlemen, this is crazy. I got so drawn up with being in Malta. It's the one and only Lee SANSUM, right? And
wow.
the one and only. Believe it or not, the one thing I love about doing this sort of stuff is I get to meet people I used to read about in magazines, and we just mentioned it off camera.
Yes.
Because you dropped out for a little while, but you used to be in the magazines all the time.
Yeah.
So how did you start in martial arts?
Well, I started doing karate as a lot of people my age did, back in the day.
Yeah.
At 77, and it was in North Manchester. So I did a lot of karate and competed nationally on.
Who was that with?
It was with. Well, I started with Wadaroo.
Yeah. Same here.
There you go. The best style.
Yeah, the peaceful way. The peaceful way.
And then did some Shukakai with Milton Shukakai Club, who at the time were one of the best squads in the.
I'll tell you what, up around Manchester, there used to be a lot of Shukakai guys up there.
Neil Fagan, Joel Tierney.
Jesus, I'll tell you something. Thank God didn't make Joe Tierney any taller.
I know.
He's absolute killer about that tall, right?
Great guy, very good friend of mine, Joe.
Joe's a great guy. So it was Shukakai, and then what did you go from there?
Well, I was fighting on the England team, and then I went to South Africa, lived there for a while, and I just took up Taekwondo.
Yeah.
In Johannesburg. I was on the South African Taekwondo team, and then I came back to UK about '83, and then I started doing some stuff on the open circuit, and then I joined the military in '85.
Right. Wow. And just while you just mentioned the circuit, was that like the old FSK?
Yeah, I did some fights on that. I fought some of the great legendary fighters like Alfie Lewis. I fought Alfie a couple of times.
Did you?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, I drew once,
Really?
and he beat me in extra time in the final of the North England Championships.
Well, he actually beat my instructor, Andy Margaret.
Oh, yeah.
And Andy was always there or thereabouts, and he was a big Wuko guy.
Yeah.
So, of course, all of Andy's stuff was point fighting, and I was awful at it, I might admit.
Yeah.
But he got beaten 10-0 by Alfie.
Yeah.
And I think it was like maybe the second technique he did was a jumping spinning back kick, and literally went like that. And Andy was always there or thereabouts, but Andy, he was always just nudging on that, breaking through on that scene. And he said, look, it was like being in front of a different guy. So who else did you fight in that period?
Oh, so many different people, and a lot of the guys now who I know I've fought against, and unfortunately in '85, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, but in '85, I joined the military and it all stopped, and I was just, I was like the kid who was going to do this, that, and the other, and then.
And why did you think the military was?
I don't know really. I think it's just one of those points in your life where I had a chat with somebody who was in the army, and what they were doing sounded really exciting, so I just joined.
Yeah,
joined up.
But we mentioned, as you said off camera, it was the military police that you were in.
Yes.
So who was that with, or what regiment were you with?
Well, I served in various roles with the military police over the 10 years, and I probably only spent a couple of years in actual uniform, so I was quite lucky. I did various interesting jobs, from witness protection in Northern Ireland, I did special investigations, I did some other protection jobs and some work with some different units as well. So I've done quite a.
But it's funny you said this, because I have a plastering business, and a friend of mine that I knew back in Coventry, won't mention his name because he's still working at the moment, and he joined the army. I didn't see him for years. He's my age as well, so he's 47, and then he arrived back on the scene and turned up at the jiu-jitsu class. So we start working out, and then he said, I've moved to Hereford. I'm just doing some work. Would you like to come and do some work for me? So I went and did it, and then obviously it was the same situation. Where are you working? He goes, well, I'm working, I'm doing some stuff. And I was like, down here, you're doing something.
Yeah,
I know you're doing something. And I said, and you don't look Arabic, so, what are you doing? And he said, I'm still in Northern Ireland. He said, it's so important. He goes, it's all going off over there. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
And again, you see, I'm the sort of guy, I look at, like 24, I watch 24, and I see Jack Bauer, and I think that's a guide to live my life. You know, I look at that and go, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds glamorous, but was it as exciting as?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had some great jobs, to be quite honest, and I've probably done as much military service after I left the military than I've done in it as well, you know. So
yeah,
you know.
Well, I noticed you're wearing the badge there today, and it's Remembrance.
Well, it's Remembrance Day today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I put my veterans badge on, and there's a lot of veterans out there as well who I know personally, martial arts instructors and friends and family. So yeah.
And so when you came out of the military, what did you do then?
Well, I came out of the military and I did a lot of karate in the military. I was in the Combined Services Karate team. I was captain of the Combined Services Karate team. And then I went to Hong Kong. I did some Kung Fu in Hong Kong and some Tai Chi and some more, you know, harder stuff. I've trained in Germany. I fought in the German Open. So every country I've been to, I've always trained in martial arts. It's been a flavour.
Yeah, I trained. Well, I was in Germany 5.5 years.
Yeah.
And I did karate. Started off, and it was pretty awful. And it was Wado Kai. So I trained there, and then I started doing Thai boxing. I did 4 years of Thai boxing, and I did some Wing Chun.
Yeah.
And again, it's very funny how the martial art morphs to suit the culture. I don't know if you've noticed that, right?
It does, yeah. I've got some funny stories, not for today, mind you, but yeah, you said that very diplomatically.
Oh, I'll try my best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as a flavour of the martial arts, which is really important for me, that it gives you something in your life that other people don't have, and you can apply it to various things, even if it's just training, you know. And I was, during the military, I figured out the self-defence stuff that we needed to do. And I worked a lot on it, and it's become a passion of mine. And you know, I work closely with Peter Constantine and Jeff.
Yeah.
And I was working out stuff that we used and tried and tested on the streets, and it works.
Yes.
Now, as a civilian, you can't do this stuff, and I'm not suggesting you should be doing it anyway. But in certain circumstances, you need to be able to do it. Not on a textbook, or not what somebody shows you. What actually works.
Yeah.
So I started getting that to my portfolio of expertise. So I've got my martial arts, which I love. I've got my self-protection, which I love, but I teach that, it's really basics. It's got to be for a military person, because they haven't got time to train. So when I left the military in '95, I was Mohammed El Fayed's bodyguard for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I worked for him, and I got to travel all over the world and do training all over the world as well, because it's a flavour of what we do, isn't it?
Exactly, so, you got to keep the tools sharp.
Yeah, absolutely, And then I was doing more and more close protection training for various bodies, you know, military and non-military. And then I settled in the north of Scotland, where I grew my academy, and then we've got a lot of various world champions at you know, various different martial arts associations, you know, all the WKA, WACO, and all this kind of stuff. And then I was still doing my security work as well. So, you know, I've worked mainly in Africa is where I kind of work, you know, Nigeria, Somalia, Libya. So
all the tourist spots where
all the
never
nice
any
places,
trouble.
all the nice places.
A couple of purse snatches every now and again.
That's right,
You know, I've always been a big fan of where you mentioned before the skills you learn in martial arts, which is just basically the dedication. Sometimes just the balance of knowing I should train today, maybe I shouldn't train today, you know, and all this stuff that you bring out to the rest of the world. That was always me. But the reality stuff, I always looked at it, and I've always said the same thing. It's a very narrow study, and again, you've got to be very careful. There's certain people that you don't want to give that technology to. It's like giving an armed gun to a toddler, and you touched on something that really made me think, just as you were saying it, where you said you looked at your personal research and you compartmentalised martial arts and then self-protection, and then the self-protection, and then your job would be looking after somebody. And what I'm trying to get round to is, I get people, and when we train, I just love the Kali and the JK. I love all of that, and I love the Kali because it makes you look like Jason Bourne. But I always say, like, I'll take you to a point where you could handle yourself against nearly anyone. But you'll have the wherewithal to be able to go, the guy's a dick. He doesn't need to be punched in the face. And you'll have seen this, especially in your role, where you see the guy grabbing the head and they're doing all this stuff. And you realise the minute you do that, that's 10 years in jail.
It's
crazy.
And a lot of the places where I work, there's no there's no law. It's militias. There's the law and order is broken down. I've just come out of Libya. There's a place in civil war. You know, I was there in 2014 and I evacuated the European Union Border Agency mission. So I've gone back in, and it's just lawless. So if in that situation, because we're walking around just in civilian clothes, just doing stuff, you know, if you were to engage with somebody over there like that, you'd be strung up. Yeah. If you were to pull your weapon, they just take it off you. They're not frightened of it. They see weapons every day.
Yes.
It's not a shock. You can't threaten somebody with a weapon. Somebody will just grab it. So the self-protection in that situation is very, very subtle.
Just more awareness.
A massive 99% awareness, but it's a one-hit shot, and you're out.
Yeah.
You don't get 2 strikes over there. 1 strike, and you're gone.
Yeah.
And you've got to go quickly. And it's where to strike, how to strike, what do you want to do to the person, because when you're in a crowded situation, somebody sees that clenched fist and like that, you're out of it.
Yeah.
You know, you might want to roll your smoke grenade over there, let it go off over there, they turn around, bang, and then off you go. So the strategies that we have, they're worked out finely to the inch, because when you're with your team as well, all the team need to know what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get a loose cannon on your team who does some crazy martial arts move, 18 strike combination, and all of a sudden you've got 1,000 people on you.
Yeah.
You know.
And numbers work. Yeah. It's, again, a friend of mine from Minneapolis, he's a Green Beret, and he's one of the nicest guys in the world. A guy called Tony Chichese, and you'd love him. But Tony's the same. Tony's a guy who's got 2 degrees in military strategy. And naively, I'm like, I've read a few books on Rommel, a bit of Napoleon. I've got a bit of an idea about tactics.
Yeah.
And then he was explaining to me stuff like we're in the 4th generation now of warfare, and I'm like, what? And he's explaining, and literally, it's like having the red pill in the Matrix and going, I don't even know the world I'm living in.
Yeah.
Because as you're saying to me, right, about going to like Somalia, to operate at that level, and there's no switching. You don't switch off, do you?
No.
You switch on when you're getting on the plane,
yeah,
and then you switch back off as you're coming off, right?
Yeah.
How do you sustain that?
I think it's once you're in the environment, the human body and the human brain is very resilient. And if you've got it as your history of doing that, once you go there and you're in that environment, pretty quickly you're okay. You could stay there for years. You know, like you say, it's the going in and switching on that's the difficult bit. But after a few days and you've figured it out, it's fine. But that's my work, you see, so I'm okay with it. If I was to take somebody else who's never been there before, they wouldn't be able to operate.
But again, it's the whole, with training, it's literally just getting into that adrenalised state. And as I'm getting older, I'm getting worse for it, because I'll go training on a Friday night. I'm just going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and in the great scheme of things, I'm not walking into a war zone, but I'm driving from Junction 2 to Junction 7 on the M6, and I've made 50 at least good valid reasons to ring up and say, look, I can't make it, because I know I'm walking into a snake, walking into a shark tank, and for an hour and a half they're trying to choke me out and kill me. And to tell you nothing but the truth, it's the whole bungee jump routine. I don't enjoy the bungee jump. I just enjoy the fact driving Matt going, shit, I'm still alive.
Yeah, I've survived that session.
That's it. But is that sort of the same thing for you?
It can be, and it can be a little bit more serious, sometimes where you're really considering. Because the place I've worked in, we've got no backup. It's us. It's me and my team. There's nothing there. And on several occasions where you contemplated how many rounds you've got left and who's going to shoot who. Wow. Before the baddies come over. Now, that's at the worst end of it, but I've done that a couple of times in the past 3 years, where you're seriously thinking, right, I'll shoot you, you shoot him, who's going to be the last guy with this round? Because you don't want to get taken by these terrorists, because that's horrendous. So that's not an option. But when you're talking like we are and rationalise it, and you're okay with it, this is pretty serious.
Well, see, again, this sort of stuff that I love. Thank you so much for your time. Great. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure meeting you.
Legend, right? Take care. Thank you.